Fine. If that's how you want to play it, I will play along, but not for you, not for us. I am doing this for me. I will show you I can meet these stupid conditions. But once I get my inheritance, I am out of your life for good, David declared, his decision slicing through any remaining hope of reconciliation as he stormed out, leaving a chilling silence behind. Evers.
I see you, my heart beats, a lady of all men's dreams.
Hello guys, meet Eva. Before we dive into Eva's story, consider subscribing to the channel. And you asked why. We bring real life dramas to you and the best possible solution. Now, let's begin. As a single mother, raising David was Eva's life's work, filled with love and sacrifices. But as David grew into adulthood, his view of Eva transformed dramatically. His respect dwindled, replaced by a glaring sense of entitlement over Eva's hard-earned assets. When are you going to stop holding on to what's rightfully mine, Mom? David will often say, his tone sharp and demanding. Each word pierced Eva's heart, yet she held on to the hope that this phase of greed was just a temporary shadow over the son she cherished. David's relationship with Mary only deepened Eva's concern. David paraded Mary around as if he was trying to prove he had moved beyond his humble beginning that Eva provided out of love and sheer efforts. David and Mary's relationship was just strategic, aimed at elevating his social and financial standard, with little regards for the emotional cost to those around him. One day, David arrived with his usual air of arrogance, his eyes scanning through the room, not for signs of Eva's well-being, but for what he could eventually claim as his own. I heard about the house sales, Mom. It must be tough keeping up without my help. Maybe you should come and work for me. You could pay off those debts that seems to be piling up, Dave suggested mockingly, a smirk playing on his face. The audacity of his suggestion struck a nerve. David, that house was sold not out of desperation, but to free myself from the very debts that were largely yours. And no, I won't be working as your housekeeper. Eva replied, her voice calm yet firm, masking the storm of emotions inside her. His face tightened, the smirk disappeared. Really, Mom? Where do you plan on getting money? Then you can't possibly think you can survive without my help. He scoffed, his words dripping with condescension. I have my ways, David. I am still capable of taking care of myself. It's time you start doing the same thing. Eva countered him, standing her ground despite the shaking of her hands, a mix of anger and sadness swirling within. The conversation ended with David storming out. His ego was bruised, not by insult, but by the stark truth of Eva's independence. His departure left a chilling silence in the home that once buzzed with laughter as a child, a reminder of the painful distance greed has placed between them. After the door slammed shut, Eva sat down, a plan slowly forming in her head. It was clear that gentle guidance wouldn't correct his course. A harder lesson was necessary, one that would expose the depth of his greed and hopefully restore the son she knew and loved back to his senses. Turning on her computer, Eva drafted an email to her lawyer, ready to set the stage for a lesson David will never forget. A lesson designed not out of spite, but out of desperate hope for his redemption. It was time for drastic measure and Eva was ready to act. Sitting across from Mr. Dan in his office, Eva laid out the details of her plan, each word deliberate, each clause a trap set with precision. The trust will only grant David access to the asset if he proves he can be selfless and caring. If he fails, The estate will go to various charities events. Eva watched as Mr. Dan nodded his pen, scratching across the paper, making her last hope for David's redemption. Are you sure you want to go through with this, Eva? It is quite unconventional, Mr. Dan asked, his brow furrowed in concern. It is the only way I can think of to possibly get through to him. He needs to learn the value of compassion and responsibility, or he risks losing everything, Eva replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil. The will was drafted with meticulous care, each line a test of David's character. Once satisfied, Eva invited David to the office under the pretense of discussing her estate planning. His arrival was punctual, something he rarely does except it involves money. You wanted to see me about the will, David asked, barely settling into his seat, his eyes eager and calculating. Yes, I've made some changes. I want to ensure everything is clear about what's expected if I am no longer here, Eva said, sliding the documents across the table. Mr. Dan observed silently, a silent sentinel during the pivotal moment. David skimmed through the document, his initial smile faltering as he read the conditions tied to the inheritance. His confusion quickly turned to frustration. What is this? Some kind of joke? Why all these conditions? David's voice rose, his veneer of composure slipping. No joke, David. You will only inherit pain from me if you meet these conditions. Show real change, take care of me, and give to others. It is very straightforward, Eva responded, watching him closely. This is ridiculous. You know I can't afford to give away my money to charity. What about my expenses? My lifestyle, he protested, his face red. Your lifestyle can change, David. It's about time you learn that money isn't everything. This is about more than just you, Eva responded, her patience thinning. He slammed his hand on the desk, standing abruptly. You can't control me like this. Even from the grave, I won't play this game with you. Then you risk losing everything. David, this is not just a test of your patience, but of your heart, Eva said firmly, standing her ground. As David stormed out of the office, the will clenched in his hand as the door slammed shut. Behind him, Mr. Dan let out a long breath. Eva, that was brave, but I do hope it doesn't push him too far away. I have to try. For his own good is the last card I have to play, Eva murmured. A mix of resolve and regret washing over her. Leaving Mr. Dan's office, Eva felt a weight lifted off her shoulders, not because the problem was solved, but because she had taken the first real step towards resolving it. One way or another, this was the turning point, the moment when either David would rise to the challenge and redeem himself, or he would walk away, losing not just his inheritance, but the last link to his family and his last chance at making things right. This was no joke, David. It is very serious. Eva kept her tone even and clear, despite the rising tension in the room. These conditions are for your own growth. It is not just about the money. It's about becoming the person I know you can be. You can't control me with your conditions, David snapped, his voice a mix of anger and disbelief. I am not some puppet. You can't manipulate me. It is not about control, David. It's about responsibility. If you want the inheritance, you meet the terms. It's that simple, Eva replied. I am not backing down. You have to prove you are capable of caring and giving, not just taking. And what if I refuse? What then, Mom? You would just give everything away to strangers. David's tone shifted from anger to almost pleading. Then, yes, that's exactly what will happen. The charity can do a lot of good with this money, more than it will do. Fueling an unchecked lifestyle, Eva answered. It was a hard line to draw, but necessary. This is absurd. David stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. I don't need your money. I don't need any of this. Think carefully, David. This isn't just about money. It's about our relationship, about your future. Don't make decisions in anger. Eva urged, hoping to reach some part of him that might still care about more than just his immediate desire. He paced back and forth, clearly conflicted, but too proud to admit it. After a few moments of silence, he stopped and faced Eva, his expression cold. Fine, if that's how you want to play it, I will play along, but not for you, not for us. I am doing this for me. I will show you I can meet these stupid conditions, but once I get my inheritance, I am out of your life for good, David declared, his decision slicing through any remaining hope of reconciliation as he stormed out, leaving a chilling silence behind. Eva sat back, feeling both victorious and heartbroken. The trap had indeed snapped shut, revealing the depth of David's current values, but at a cost. Eva had set the wheels in motion, and now it was up to David to decide his path forward. The following days were heavy with anticipation. Eva informed Mr. Dan about the confrontation, and he reassured her that everything was legally sound. Now they just wait. He said, a note of sympathy in his voice. He might just surprise you. Whether David will rise to the challenge or continue down his path of self-destruction was uncertain. Eva had done what she felt was necessary, not just for his future, but for her peace of mind. Now, it was a waiting game, one that would either bring her son back to her or confirm that the boy she raised was truly lost. As difficult as it was, she prepared herself for both possibilities, hoping for a transformation but bracing for disappointment. One day, Eva heard a knock at the door. She opened the door. It was David. Mom, I am sorry. I am ready to make amends. You've said a lot of things, David. It's hard to know what you mean anymore. Her voice was calm, but inside her heart ached to see him so lost. I know I've messed up, but seeing everything falling apart, I don't know if I can fix this. David's voice cracked, his usual confidence gone, replaced by a vulnerability Eva hadn't seen since he was a child. It is never too late to change, David, but it has to be for the right reasons, not just because you've lost everything. Eva stepped aside, letting him into the house, the cold evening air making her shiver slightly as they sat in the living room, the room where she had raised him, taught him his first word, and played countless games. A heavy silence settled between them. I've lost most of my friends. I don't even know who I am anymore. Without the money and the power, David's eyes were downcast, his hands fidgeting with a loose thread on his jacket. Maybe losing those things is a chance to find out who you really are. You used to be someone who cared, who loved before all this greed took over. Eva reached out, touching his hand gently, a gesture that felt foreign after so many years of distance. Can I start over? Can you teach me how? Mom. His voice was hesitant, almost scared. Yes, David, we can try, but it's going to be a long journey, and you need to be committed. This isn't just about satisfying the condition of the will anymore. It's about becoming the person I hope you will grow up to be. They talked long into the night, discussing plans for him to start volunteering at a local charity. It was a small step, a way for him to start giving back to the community that he had ignored in his pursuit of wealth. The following weeks, Eva saw a change in David. He was quieter, more reflective, and his efforts at the charity began to mend some of the bridges he had burned. Slowly, people started to see a change, and while some were skeptical, others offered cautious re-engagement. One day, David came home from the charity with a smile Eva hadn't seen in years. "Mom, today I helped organize a food drive and it felt good, really good. Not like closing a deal good, but something deeper. That's because you are making a real difference in people's life. David, this is what truly matters." Eva smiled, feeling a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, they were on the right path. As months passed, David's transformation became more apparent. He was no longer the high-flying socialite, but rather a community figure who people respected for his contributions, not his wallet. However, despite these changes, the condition of the will loomed over. It was a constant reminder of the potential consequences if David slipped back into his old ways. It kept both of them accountable, but Eva couldn't help but wonder what would happen when the day came to execute the will. Would David revert to his old self, or had he truly changed? As David left for another day at the charity, waving goodbye with a genuine smile, Eva allowed herself to believe that the change was real. The trap she had set had served its purpose, not just to protect her assets, but to save her son from himself. It had exposed his flaws, yes, but it had also set him on a path to redemption. And for the first time in years, Eva felt a sense of peace, hopeful for the future they might rebuild together. As months turned into a year, the transformation in David was evident to all who knew him. His regular curse and backlash to his mom, Eva, now filled with tales of financial conquest. He talks about his experiences and the people he helped. Each story he shared marked another step away from the person he had been. "Mom, today I met a family who lost everything in a fire. We managed to get them into a temporary home. It's hard to describe, but knowing we helped them, it changes you." David's voice was soft, his words thoughtful, reflecting his journey towards genuine empathy. "I am proud of you, David. It's this moment that defined who we are, not the balance in our bank account." Eva's response was not just as his mother, but as a witness to his profound change. Despite the positive changes, the ultimate test approached. The final reading of the will, the condition Eva had set, were almost fulfilled. The true challenge was whether David's changes were deep enough to last beyond the incentive of the will. The day of the final assessment came. They sat together in Mr. Dan's office. Once again, the atmosphere filled with a palpable tension. "David, based on your action over the past year, it seems you have met the conditions set in your mother's will. How do you feel?" Mr. Dan looked over his glasses at David, his expression unreadable. "It's not about the will anymore, Mr. Dan. It's about who I've become and who I want to continue to be. The money doesn't matter. What I've learned and the people I've met, that's what's most important." David's earnest response surprised even Mr. Dan. Turning to Eva, David's eyes held a clarity Eva hadn't seen in years. "Mom, whether or not I get the inheritance, I want to continue the work I am doing. It's giving my life a purpose I never had before. I owe you an apology for everything, and a thank you for saving me from myself." Tears welled up in Eva's eyes as she listened to her son, the child she's raised, who had finally returned to the core values she tried to instill in him long ago. "David, that's all I ever wanted to see. You understanding the true values of life beyond money. I am so proud of the man you've become." They embraced, the years of tension and distance melting away. In that moment, Mr. Dan cleared his throat, a slight smile playing on his lips. "Well, it seems my services here are concluding on a high note. David, your mother has indeed left you the inheritance, but something tells me you will use it far more wisely than you might have before now." As they left the office with David beside Eva, Not as the entitled son, but as the caring man he had become. Eva felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had been arduous, fraught with emotional turmoil, but the outcome was more rewarding than she could have ever imagined. The bitter end Eva had once feared was just a new hopeful beginning. As we wrap up this story, I have a question that I hope will spark some thoughtful discussion. Do you believe that people only change when they face severe consequences, or can they transform with understanding and support alone? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I am eager to hear your perspective on what truly drives personal change. If you enjoyed this story and the discussion is packed, please give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more engaging content like this. Your interaction helps us grow and continue these important conversations. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to reading your response. Till I see you again in our next story. Goodbye.
Girl, you know it's true.